Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Welcome to the Catholic Mama, where you'll learn how to deepen and defend your faith, find comfort as we share the vocation of parenthood, and learn how to raise your children confidently Catholic. I'm your host, Christine Mooney Flynn. Let's get started. Welcome. Hello, and welcome back to the Catholic Mama. I'm your host, Christine Mooney Flynn, and I have back by popular demand, drum roll, my husband, Pat Flynn. Hello, husband.
Glad to be on the Catholic Mama again. Thank you for having me.
Of course, this just seemed, it's such a timely topic. I mean, we really couldn't dance around. It had to get done. So luckily, we have a babysitter, and it's the middle of the day, and we can do a podcast. The couple that podcasts together stays together. That's how the saying goes,
Until
right?
you get your first negative review.
And we'll blame it all on the spouse, and that'll be the end of our podcasting relationship, at least.
We'll really test the covenant with that one.
All jokes aside, the events of this week in the news, how it's affected the Catholic Church, Catholics, and also other people looking in. We've the issue of the child abuse scandal, or I guess it's just not even children, sexual abuse scandal.
Just a clergy abuse scandal.
A clergy abuse scandal.
Yeah.
It's just something that can't be ignored, and we don't want to ignore it. The issue here that we want to avoid is walking away or stepping away from our Catholic faith because of the evil doings of men.
I think there's there are two dangers that people can fall into when something like this happens. And, we be perfectly frank, this is, one could argue that this is the worst scandal in church history. But those two traps, I think, are one, people walking away, and we both know people that have done this in our own family, have just left the church because of this scandal. And I don't entirely fault them for that. I think it's mistaken, and we'll talk about that. The other is just keeping your head low and waiting for it to pass, and that might even be worse in some regards. But it's unfortunate because both of those seem to be the easy options, and people could justify them in some ways, but I think neither is the right option. But those are the two things that I would be weary of in seeing. We've already seen it happen many times before, and I would not be surprised if we start seeing that happen now as either a turning away or a general silence and hoping and waiting until
this all passes over. So that's why we're here. We didn't actually get a babysitter for this. We went to see Mission Impossible Fallout, which was great, by the way. Maybe we'll talk about that on another podcast. Who knows? We talked about this. There were clear morality lessons.
There was. I really enjoyed the movie. I think we could make some tie-ins there.
Maybe we'll do the moral movies of 2018 that you didn't expect.
Morals.
A severe lack of morals. So, and we also we're going to talk a little bit about the scandal itself, but mostly I think we want to focus on why we are Catholic and why we are going to stay Catholic regardless of these terrible atrocities within the church leadership.
Yeah, and I mean, what can even be said about what has gone on that hasn't already been said? And it's very easy to when things like this to come out and start what's that term they use, virtue signaling, and condemn it from the high thing. Like, look, we're all messed up people, but this was some really messed up stuff. Some of the stories are it just twists your stomach. So anybody that has been either directly or indirectly affected by this, I mean, I'm sorry. It's just one of the most sickening things that you can think of. And this goes for any abuse of power, but especially when it comes to the religious context of people who are supposed to be chaperones, more or less, of your soul. To me, there's no greater crime a person can commit. I mean, you can ruin somebody's life. That's really bad. But if you possibly lose a soul because of your actions, I mean, I don't know if there's any more grave sin than what's being committed. So I just don't want to make light of it in any sense, and I don't think we have to skip around it to make the point. It's not an either or. It's not we have to defend the Catholic Church and all of it. No, and that's never been right. The Catholic Church has always been in need of a reform, and I think if we had any advantages, we coming into the Catholic Church, we're fully well aware of its history, and not just the sex abuse scandal that's going on, but the entire history of the Catholic. To study the Catholic Church is just to study corruption and sin. So, on one hand, it's not acceptable that any of this ever goes on. But on another hand, surprise. Now, it is a surprise how bad it really was and how sick that is a surprise. But it's never a surprise that the Church will be the primary target of sin, of the devil and evil. Of course it will be. But on the other hand, it's not enough to just be like, oh, well, this is to be expected. No, that's not how to.
It should never be expected.
Even if it's expected, doesn't mean that it should be tolerated. That's the key. And you come to the Catholic Church because you believe that the Catholic Church is true. And you come to the Catholic Church not because you think it's a hotel of saints, but because it's a hospital of sinners. And that is not just for the laity, but the entire church, at least here on earth. Heaven, hopefully things are a little bit in better shape up there. So those were just some initial remarks that I think need to be said. And again, we came into the church, through a full grace-fueled, grace-filled conversion, seeing that this is not, we are not putting our faith in men here, right? This is something that is built by, sustained by, supported, and ultimately guided through all its sick twists and turns by the Holy Spirit. And the biggest mistake, and part of the reason people do turn away from the church, is I think part of that is, part of it is just they're so disgusted that maybe they can't help. But the other part is maybe they were seeing the church through the wrong perspective of something that wasn't. Maybe they were putting too much of their faith rather in men. And then one more thing that I would say, I actually wrote a piece about this. I didn't send it to you yet. Is that you don't abandon your relationship with Jesus because of the sins of Judas. You use your relationship with Jesus to make sense and try to straighten out the sins of Judas.
That's at the end of the podcast, because I think that's it. You summed it all up. Yes, to all of that. The real reason that we are the real reason that we are Catholic, or that a person, I guess, what Catholics cling to is the real presence of Jesus in that Eucharist. You go outside of the Catholic Church, you're not getting that. If you believe that there is Jesus in that Eucharist, you need to maintain your relationship and speak out and reform a church that desperately needs the support of good people right now.
Yes, if all the good people leave, right, and which many good people should be repulsed by this, we need you. We need the good people here to purge. And don't get me wrong, I believe that this is an opportunity, if not a mandate, for a great and painful and perhaps even necessarily brutal purge of the Catholic Church. I think the biggest mistake before is, and this was before we were part of the church, it seems like things were not purged. There was not an effective cleansing that goes on. And so look what happened. Out of this mess, out of this catastrophe, then some type of full-on demonstration of justice here. The church's its moral authority has already been tarnished. This is only going to damage it severely even more. And you see what happens when the church loses its moral authority. Ireland is a great example. And we need the church to have its moral authority. And the thing that disappoints me so much is that not only is that religious moral authority so important for the fabric of society, and the trust in church is not only the people who are directly victims of this, is it just so detestable, but all the good priests and all the good bishops who have their reputations ruined and their credentials destroyed, who are mocked just because they're priests and immediately labeled as rapists and pedophiles, and they are victims in this too, not direct or as severe victims. Or any Catholics who
the entire church.
The entire church are victims of this. The entire church are victims of this. We all feel this pain, and we were talking about this before. It's like, come on, you want Catholics to evangelize. You can't. It's tough enough business in today's culture selling Jesus, the church, the Eucharist to begin with. So, look, evangelization is difficult already. Don't make it embarrassing for us.
Well, it's like in marketing, right? If you have a bad product and you market it, people are going to know it's a bad product even quicker.
Yeah. And
so if you're out evangelizing and trying to say how great so I guess then you have to divorce in some respects. Well, you have to separate yourself from the sins, right? While still professing the Catholic faith. Is that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's just another barrier. It's another layer that you need to be ready to explain to people in exactly the same way that we are doing. You do not, and I think you start by explaining that it starts with a relationship with Christ, and the most intimate relationship that you can get with Christ is that real presence in the Eucharist, and that's going to be there no matter who is celebrating the Mass, no matter what that person's sins are. God can write straight with crooked lines. We know this. This is the history of humanity. This is the story of our redemption. So you have to lead with that, and you have to get people to see the right perspective. What frustrates me is that should be an unnecessary barrier to entry. People should see the Catholic Church as a moral authority. They should see the beauty and the goodness that it's doing. And don't get me wrong, the Church does immense amounts of goodness and beauty and charity, but that doesn't make the headlines. That isn't what most people on the outside are seeing. The news is never reporting the great charity work of all the churches, apostolates and missionaries and this and that. That isn't what's being reported. That's all there, but people don't see that. What they see are the scandals. It's making the headlines. This is disgusting stuff. But it's very frustrating, especially for people like us who are evangelizing and doing this, how difficult it makes this job, because you want to talk about the Eucharist and Jesus and the beauty and goodness of Catholic Church, and then all this comes out there,
just tarnishes all this good work that people are trying to do.
So yeah, it's frustrating to say the least.
Right, they should have.
But it's not a reason to quit.
No, it's not a reason to quit.
Not the faith or evangelization is what I'm saying. It's certainly not enough to lead the faith, but it's not enough to stop evangelizing either. And you need to not just evangelize people to come into the church, but those who are in the church to demand reform and continue evangelizing to bring good people in.
The priest at during the homily on the Assumption of Mary into heaven. It was yesterday, right? 2 days ago? What day is it?
Yeah, I went to the vigil.
That's right. Okay, yeah. So I took the kids all by myself, two out of the three, and sat through Mass with two little babes. But the priest who's doing the homily is, I think, a football coach for a local Catholic high school, or I can't remember. We actually were a little late, so I may have missed that part. But he said something. He said not to make light of our trials and tribulations, but he uses this one kind of cliched phrase with the kids that he's coaching out on the, it's a hot August day. They're sweating. They don't want to be out there. And it's a very cliche saying, but, what do you say? Do it right, do it light, do it wrong, do it long. So initially, when all this stuff started happening, a purge of what was happening at in that moment, however many years ago when these scandals started to surface, if they had done it right then, now we're going to have to go through maybe perhaps a more painful, longer purge.
Well, just like you can learn from the sins of individuals, you can learn from the sins of institutions too, and there's obviously a million different there's obviously a million different theories of why this happened or what could have been done, but ultimately, you can boil things down to, rather than taking that pain at the beginning and doing what was the right thing. Somebody's whatever decided that they thought they could handle this themselves or keep it quiet or reorganize and take the easier route at the beginning for what ended up being disastrous long term. And there's a reason to go see Mission Impossible, because the whole theme of that movie, of Tom Cruise, of Ethan Hunt, not to make light of what's going on by tying to Mission Impossible, but this is a real theme, is every decision he makes is essentially that in the movie. Do I do the right thing now, even though there might be really bad things that come out of it? It would be easier for me to do the wrong thing in this situation, kill this innocent person or whatever, to not blow my cover. But he never makes that decision. And so again, there's so much to be learned from that. And it seems like this has been just a series of moral mistakes that the church as an institution, which of course is just a collection of individuals, I don't even want to try and get into the whole mess of trying to explain it all, but there is an opportunity right now for people within the church, the hierarchy, to seal this off, to burn this off, whatever this is. And I'm praying, and I'm hoping, and I don't know exactly what the pragmatic steps are at this point, but this is, I believe, a hinge point. Something needs to happen right now.
Yeah, so what you said before, it's just speculation. Maybe somebody thought that they could handle this alone. They could reorganize. It wasn't as bad as they thought, or they were strong enough on their own. Truth is, that's a sign of pride, and that's a great sin to have that kind of pride, that you feel like you can fix something on your own.
About that.
Somebody taught us about sin and pride. Somebody famous, right? Yeah. We're stronger together. We may be, separate people, individual people, but of course we're stronger together and stronger with Christ, rather than trying to cover up or shush or make something smaller, fewer people that would know about something like this. We're stronger together. Don't leave the church. Really
again, a brief survey of history should both disgust you and give you hope. It'll disgust you in a sense of uncovering just how many evil people have been in the church, including evil popes. A long series of bad popes in the church. And the fact that the church has still prevailed and still done as much good as it has is testament to
What was that story? That's one of the saints. And also all the evil people, but also the many, many thousands of saints that are in our church as well. The son who went to Rome.
Oh yes, I know what you're saying. I forget the story exactly, but the son, father raised a son, very Catholic. The son eventually, as he got older, wanted to go to Rome, but he wanted to meet the Pope, and the father was so worried that if he went to Rome and saw all the corruption, filth, and dirt, that he would lose his Catholic faith. But eventually, the son got away. He went to Rome. He came back more Catholic than ever, and his father was crying. He's like, I thought you were going to lose the faith as soon as you saw the corruption and filth or whatever. And the son said, no, it's only been strengthened. There's no way that an institution that disgusting and that corrupt could have survived without the grace of God. And, it's funny, but it's
true.
It is absolutely true. Upon this rock, my church shall be built, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against us, was the promise. Did not promise that the devil wouldn't try or succeed in many ways. But we have to be there to recognize that the church is more than just a bunch of humans, right? There is a supernatural element that Jesus left us with, and it is our up. Again, I don't know what the steps are at this time. I've been thinking about it, reading, talking to a lot of people about what certain things could be, but the biggest point I think we wanted to make is this is why we are Catholic. This is why we will remain Catholic. It's because it's more than an institution.
So even if there's no pragmatic steps that we know right now that's going to get us from this kind of dismal spot and some really disgusting things that have happened over the past several decades to, a heaven on earth type of church, I think I would suggest, if you're worried about why you believe what you do, or you're worried that you might not be able to defend what you believe even more now, read the Catechism. Right, get steeped in the Catholic faith and understand there's a very, very good reason why you should or do believe what you do. And start there.
And I don't want to mean it's so easy to put your head down and think we don't know what to do right now. The first thing you do is you speak up and you let people know this is why you're Catholic, this is why you're going to continue to be Catholic, and this is why you're not standing for what's going on. If you know anything, you are obligated to speak up against it. And I think that's always been part of the problem, is there's been people within the church who, heard whispers and rumors and just left it at that. And as far as I'm concerned, they're all implicit.
Yeah.
And these people need to be, and I think we're at a point where names are finally being named. And you can understand, people are friends, they see each other this, why, but it doesn't matter. It's not excusable. So there's a lot of resources. There's a lot of ideas out there about having some various independent investigation groups or whatever, and that that's a separate, I think, conversation, but a soon conversation that needs to be had. But to your point, again, remind yourself why you are Catholic to begin with. Why you are Catholic to begin with, because if your faith hinges on how well behaved people in the church act, then your faith could poof at any second. and that's not what the faith is about.
Right. So, and if you're questioning whether or not something, I think, in this instance, outward looking in, there's clear right and wrong, black and white. It's right there. Now for victims, it becomes a very nasty quagmire. You can look at the means, look at the end. If it's charity, if it's true love there, true godly love, then I think you know what's right and wrong. Back in seventh grade, we had this kind of mean teacher. I can't think of her name right now, but man, she was tough. But one of the things, she was trying to get, somebody did something wrong. Everybody was covering up for the person. They didn't want them to get in trouble. And we kind of laughed because it wasn't that serious, whatever it was, like threw a wad of paper at her or something. And turned around and said, "Your silence is your consent." And even as silly as that whole incident was, I can hear that woman say that every once in a while. And in this, silence is consent. Whether you're consenting to the people who are leaving the church because they're disgusted by it, you're silent because of the wrongs that you've seen, but you think maybe, that person really is nice. They'll figure it out. They'll get better. Be bold. Be bold in why you're Catholic. Be loud about it, because I'm sure you go to a party this weekend, you're on a barbecue, somebody's going to mention, oh, God, and what are you going to say? Why are you still Catholic? Come up with some answers, just quick ones. You can say, I believe in the real presence of the Eucharist, of Jesus Christ in that Eucharist. You can just have some standbys and say, it is terrible what has happened. The church is not only on this earth, and I believe that Jesus is right there and the Holy Spirit's guiding us.
Yeah, we're not we're Catholic because we believe Catholicism is true. That's the fundamental aspect of it. Now, what does that mean when you unpack that? Does that mean that everybody in the church is going to be a perfect imitation of Christ? Absolutely not. Where anybody ever got that expectation from is certainly not Catholic teaching.
There's a lot of sin.
Never. Now, at the same time, it should never be tolerated. It should never be accepted, and we as Catholics have an obligation to speak out. I'm glad we had this conversation. It's needed. I'm writing this little short article on it, so maybe we could post
link that. Yeah, that would be good. Mm-hmm. I'd like to read that. I like the line that you said about Judas and Jesus.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not original to me, but...
Well,
since I can't remember the source, we'll just...
It must be you. Pat Flynn said. But thank you for... Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, those are just some initial thoughts, and I'm still processing a lot of it. This kind of was quite a shock. Kind of, well, there was the cardinal issue first, and then before that. So I guess there was something. But.
Yeah, and we're not making any of the jokes that we've just said. We're not making light of any of this. This is sickening, and I think especially as parents now, the thought of this is just really stomach turning.
Well, that was one of your biggest concerns before becoming Catholic, is because of this abuse scandal. You wanted nothing to do with the church.
That was one of the reasons. Yes.
It's not like you were indifferent to this coming.
No,
in.
this is the idea of any kind of abuse for anybody, and in particular child abuse is just, oh man, it's tough. But that's actually a good point. So even though I had very strong feelings and I was I was very nervous about the Catholic Church because of this, now that I am Catholic and I understand the Catholic doctrine and I understand why the church operates as it does, I've read the catechism, I believe all of this. I think I have very, very strong rationale for believing all of this. I will not leave the church.
Done.
From the mouth of a newly baptized Catholic.
Yeah. Folks, thanks for tuning in. I know this isn't the most joyful, bouncy, jovial episode on the Catholic Mama. Bouncy, jovial episode on the Catholic Mama. I don't know why I'm doing your outro right now, but...
Go ahead. I like hearing your voice.
But it annoys me, especially as somebody who takes the Catholic faith extremely seriously. Well, the two things, I'll just reiterate at the beginning that we said at the episode, having, again, family members of people who just immediately turned their back on the church, not even just from this, but for any other reason. Maybe a priest was mean to them or something. Just these deep understandings. And that itself is not entirely their fault. The church really seemed to have dropped the ball on catechism for a very long time and not really teaching people properly what the Catholic faith is about. So it's not, there's spread the blame all around in this or that. Nobody's for why all this stuff goes on. But the other thing is the silence on it, and job of speaking out and saying things. So we just want to add to that conversation. Encourage you to continue to evangelize. As difficult as it is in this time, this is an opportunity to get people who might have otherwise been silent to really speak up, to if this has really shaken their faith, to investigate it, to see, why am I at this church? Is it because I like the priest or something like that? So maybe there is some good that can come out of this. If there's anything we know about God, it is that he can draw a greater good out of even the most awful evils of the time. So let us pray that continues to happen.
Yes. Thank you for listening. Remember, Satan will not prevail, but he is going to fight us, so we got to fight it back with love.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.